we go to this house. Do you ever see the Philadelphia Story?
Yeah.
Okay, so the Montgomery Scott Estate, which is what that movie's about, it was on this estate, and they had these. It's called Banjo Town. They had these 6 teeny little houses on the road that the help lived in, and she took us to one of those houses, and she said, "This is what you can afford." It was sliding off its foundation. I walked in, it had one little bathroom, and literally, you couldn't there were no furniture on the 2nd floor because it had one little it had this little Martha Washington staircase. What that is it turns so tightly you can't fit furniture up it. So we had to put on a two-story addition to get a bed in. So Bob happened to have been in this men's group, and one of the guys was going through divorce, and he was a contractor, and he said, "Let me teach you." So he would come at night and help Bob show him how to use the miter saw, show him how to use it. My mom came.
So Bob didn't know anything about construction
Nothing.
when
Nothing.
and that has become his life.
Yes. We literally when I tell you the number, excuse me, of mistakes we made, um, my mom showed me how to hang wallpaper. My dad would come up and help me redo the floors. So we couldn't hire anybody. We flipped that house 18 months later. That same realtor came to us and said, "I can double your money." So we began to flip every 18 months and in every 18 months, we were having a baby. So
I know.
Anxiety.
I
Like,
well,
I'm getting
imagine, you know
anxiety.
yeah, I mean, I remember a friend
Well,
who I had met came over to my house, and she brought her little girls, and her little girl goes, "Mom, mom," and pulls on her arm. She goes, "My dollhouse is bigger than this." I was like, "Yeah, sweetheart, I'm aware." And, so for 16 years, we do this, and then we end up my mom had died, and I wanted a home that would have a guest house for my dad, and we found this house. It's 307 years old. William Penn deeded it. I said 307 years old a year.
The most beautiful grounds I've ever seen.
Oh, and it has 2 guest houses. So, it's like the Lord was like, "You know what?" And, we built a barn so that we can do so much entertaining, and so it's just been
I love that barn. I wanna have a party in
I
that.
know, I know. So it's been so much fun, and the story, with my uncle visiting, and that's when that whole everything kicks off.
Well, tell the story because I'm still not where I wanna be
Okay, well, we can go back.
with home, but tell the story of the uncle because we might be getting there.
So, as I think I said at the beginning, my oldest was leaving for college, and I began to feel that shift of who am I going to become. And during that time, one of my uncles was visiting, and he visited us pretty regularly. Um, he was in my living room, and I was in the kitchen, and I hear this, "Ruthie, Ruthie, come join me in the living room." And I go sit down, and he said, "May I ask you a very, very private question?" And he said, "Sure, Uncle Hubert." And he said, "What are you 100% depending on the Lord for right now?" And I said, "Besides raising these kids?" He said, "Yes." I said, "Nothing." He said, "I know." He said, "You and Bob have gotten so good at what you do that you've left little to no room to watch God work and get the glory, not you." He said, "Can I challenge you with something?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "Ask the Lord to give you a vision beyond your resources, beyond your financial needs, your personal capital, and your education, so that you can see Him work and He gets the glory, not you. So beyond what you have, what you know, and need." So I started to pray that pretty boldly. Um, that is something that the last 16 years had done, was given me a pretty strong prayer life, uh, and an understanding that, uh, but God, right? So, I remember my aunt, this is a little aside, but she had painted this mural, this big canvas, completely black, the entire thing. And in the bottom corner in white, it was dot, 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 but God. So, I truly understood what that meant. So, I began to pray, vision beyond my resources. And, shortly thereafter, I went to a conference in Connecticut, a Women Doing Well conference. And I had already hosted a Women Doing Well event in Philadelphia. But I went up again, and, I know you're aware, but Women Doing Well has to do with helping women come to the place of understanding their purpose, their plan, and what they're passionate about. So I'm sitting here with, rock stars. That's all I'm gonna tell you. Janice, I mean, women that were they had already made their mark. Um, Ally Lloyd Jones, and I'm sitting at this table
I
going,
mean, that's daunting.
"Oh, beyond. I'm a housewife from the main line." And, I mean, that's how you see yourself. It doesn't matter that you've had history, this is who you are. And, I there was 3 women were on a panel. They were all in this C-suite space, and they were talking about leaving their different industries going into ministry. And one had said, "You know how I'm really struggling. I know how to do a spreadsheet in my sleep, but I don't even know how to make a charcuterie board.
Oh,
And I'm in my car with my, dearest friend driving home, and I'm just in tears, and I said, "You know, Heather, I don't know my purpose anymore. The only thing I'm passionate about is what the Lord would be willing to do in and through my home and my family. What would he ever do with that? And I definitely don't know God's plan for me." And she started laughing, and she, like, jabbed my arm, and she said, "Well, at least you know how to make a charcuterie board." So, if you look at the book and you open it up, the very first
yeah.
is the charcuterie board. So I continue, I'm praying that prayer.
I mean, it's stunning, but every single thing when I first watched your show and you had sent me your book, and I mean, I was blown away. And I was like, surely this is all staged. Like, surely they have people come in and I mean, there's dish after dish after dish and cookies and biscuits and omelets and
Nobody.
you know. And I'm like, she cooks all this? Like, I DoorDash, you cook.
And I just interviewed a woman on the show down in Charlotte, Ann Nielsen, who's just a love.
Saw that. I saw that.
We had probably 4 people staging everything around us. Like, if I got up, they'd fluff my pillow. If I did, and I was like, "Where are these people when I do everything every week?" Because I would sure be much more productive if it wasn't just by myself.
I mean, woman, you cook.
Yeah, I do.
Okay, so God's saying Heather's saying, "At least you can do a
Okay,
charcuterie board."
so I get invited shortly thereafter, but my dear friend, Wendy Rogers, who you're gonna meet soon,
Can't wait.
who, speaks a lot around the country, but she was speaking at a Women of Legacy conference at Museum of the Bible. And she called me and said, "Hey, what are you doing? You wanna come stay with me at the Trump Hotel at the time?" Um, she's like, I said, "Yeah, I mean, I have no business being at that conference." And she's like, "Just come crash with me." So I take a couple days, I go down to her. I walk in. Okay, can I just tell you, first of all, have you ever been to that hotel? Is it the Waldorf again? It's the Waldorf. I walk in ripped jeans that I've had, and I still wear them since I was 18. And I'm wearing
I'm sorry, but you're bragging now that you
look, I'm just saying I did not
one
add a
for
tank top
18.
and flip-flops. And I walk into this thing and everybody, all our friends, Janice, everybody's there. And I sit down at the only available seat next to this woman who's just beautiful and regal. And, I'm like, what am I doing? And she and I start to have a conversation. And she starts to cry and she says, "You're my divine appointment." And I said, "For what?" And she said, "I told the Lord on the way here, I wanted to meet he had to have someone for me." So, and we both were passionate, she was with a family business. I was with a family business. Very, very different levels of family business. He gets up and goes to get a drink and someone says, "Do you know who that is?" I said, "No." And they told me and I didn't know them. But she came back and we just had a wonderful time of connection and talking about how our passion for restoring the ruins of property as well as the ruins of and
That's amazing.
mhm,
The ruins of home.
which is in my book. The very first page is a whole thing and it talks about clean up the rot. It's time to clean up, to restore your home. So we leave about a month later. And again, this whole time I'm praying vision beyond your resources. And I host a wedding at my house, a few hundred people. And I get chronic migraines and I'm laying on my kitchen floor. It's a Sunday afternoon. The wedding had been Saturday. My husband's massaging my head and my phone starts to beep. And I said, "Who is it?" And she said, "Sarah." I said, "What does she need something?" Because she kept trying to reach me. He said, "She wants to be in London tomorrow, hosting an event." And I said, "Tell her no." And he said, "You're not even prayed about." So he proceeds to pray. And her next text was, "I'm bringing you out." So I go 2 days later, missed her huge event, but Sally Lloyd Jones was there as well. And at the end of that week, Sarah says, "I'd like to take you both to my favorite lunch place, which is in the Cotswolds." So we go to this place in the Cotswolds, and while we're having lunch, again, I think it's the way you're looking at me like you have lost your mind. What this is so much anxiety, like all that house is watching me. Okay. So she says, "Ruth, if you're moving every 18 months, why do you even bother to unpack? Because you're going to keep moving." And I said, everyone's hungry for home. They both, when I tell you, Teresa, at the same time, they pick up their computers. We're at this luncheon table. They look at each other. One says, "It hasn't been taken." And I said, "What hasn't been taken?" And they said, "The name." I said, "For what?" They said, "You're supposed to write." I said, "Oh, no, 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 no. I will never write. Ever. I can't think of anything I'd less like to do or that I'm not equipped to. I wouldn't even know where to I'm never gonna write." Um, and it had just come up in a family kind of reunion event that I had been at, where they were all talking about the next books they wanted to do, and I started laughing and said, "I will never do a book." So, this is on the backdrop of that. So, for the rest of the trip, they're giving me a hard time saying, "You need to write a book." I said, "I don't have anything to say." Um, I get home. One of my sisters lives in one of our guest cottages, and she was walking over and she says, "How was your trip?" And I said, "You're gonna laugh. I think I need to write a book." And she starts to cry and she said, "You're supposed to do this." I said, "I will never write it. You can mark my words, right?" She said, "I have a friend who's an author. Would you be willing to talk?" And I said, "Sure, but I'm not doing this." So she said, "Just tell her who you are and your story." So I get on the phone with this woman named Jess, and we have a long conversation. And she said, "I think you're supposed to write this book." I said, I'm not doing it." She said, "May I come visit you?" She flies out the next week.
This is all crazy making.
No,
All these things
crazy.
up
No,
and happening, and you're the one going, "I don't want this. I don't want this. I
no.
don't want
It only gets worse. I'm worse or more miraculous.
or better. I don't
Or better,
know."
miraculous. So she comes and visits. The night before she leaves, she says to me, she's interviewing my family the whole time. And I had said to her, "Listen, I am willing to write a little bit of story and write all my recipes because my kids always want my recipes.
Which is really cool.
Chat for Christmas for everybody." She said, "No." The night before she's leaving, she says, "This is bigger than you. I'd like to help you collaborate." And I said, "Yes, I'm not doing that." So the last day that he's literally leaving on a Sunday, she's flying out Sunday afternoon. Or a Saturday, she and my sister walk in. I'm sitting on that same couch I had been sitting with Uncle Hubert. She walks in and she has 2 wrapped presents, and she hands me the first one, and I open it up, and it's a teapot, and she says, "Ruth, for every time you're asking the Lord for that vision beyond your resources, I want you to have a cup of tea." And I burst out laughing, and it had become a joke, and I said, "Jess, I don't drink tea, and I'm not writing the book." And, in hindsight, and I just wanna throw this in there, that teapot was from a place called Terrain. Are you familiar with Terrain? Anthropology owns Terrain, and they're huge. They're probably my favorite home outdoor store. They became my first partners 2 years later. And
Oh my god.
I know. So she hands me the second gift, and it's wrapped. And she said, "Before you open it," she said, "your sister and I went to home stores, gardening stores, bookstores. I wanted to find a book that I wanted to find something that would look like what I thought you would produce if you ever did a book." And I was like, "This is really interesting." I open it up. I'm like, "Jess, where is this place?" She said, "I don't know." We flip it to that. It's the farm in the Cotswolds Sarah had taken.
Okay, I got chills.
The chances of that, Teresa, are 0. 0. I had never told anyone it was Dale Sur Farm. I didn't know Dale Sur Farm even did a book. I hadn't told my sister where I'd been because, I mean, how irrelevant. She doesn't know anything about the Cotswolds.
But Ruth, also what's woven into this, well, it's a new community of women for you, and they're women who are immediately supportive. And for that person and your sister to go to all these places and to find there's so much love in this
Yeah.
story.
Oh, oh,
I mean,
it only get it.
it's like as women, so often we don't support one another
Oh,
in success, in leadership, in business. And you've got these women going, "You're the one going, nah, I don't want it."
I
They are
I didn't
pulling
believe in myself. I didn't believe in myself, and it was, it's one of those things where I literally so as soon as this happens, Teresa, I fall on my knees in the living room, and I'm just crying, and I said, "God, I'll do it." But I said, "I don't know how to do it. I don't know what to say, and I don't even know that I have the means to do it." I mean, all 3 things that what had I been praying about. And she says to me, "Okay, I'm going to put on your phone an app. Every Monday night for 6 months, I'm gonna send you questions. You're gonna speak into your phone. It's gonna transcribe onto my computer, and you and I are gonna work on that." We do this for 6 months. Her friend then comes over and takes 33,000 photos, culls it down, culls it all down to like 1,000 or maybe it was like 600. And then my sister and I, in my living room for 3 straight days, cut and pasted this 300-page manuscript with pictures. And I said,
and the
"Hey,
photographs are so
aren't the pictures so beautiful?"
oh my gosh, no, no, they're beyond and it transports you immediately. The cover, you open it. I mean, I wanted to be there. I think I got that book when you sent it to me, like, on a Sunday, and I sat down in my bedroom, exactly where I talked to you, and I just couldn't stop.
Yeah.
I just looked like, "This is otherworldly."
But I say to people, I can also tell when they haven't read it and they've just seen the pictures. And I'm like, no, no, I really have something I want to say. So my husband and I were sitting we have 2 chairs we have a fireplace in our kitchen and we're sitting in front of the fireplace. It's Labor Day weekend. I have this stacked 300 pages and I'm sitting in front of me and Wendy, the same friend calls me and she says, all right, who's gonna publish this? And I was like, I have no idea. She said, "All right, I know the person who helped Rick Warren write Purpose Driven Life. Let's get you on a call." So she immediately puts us on this Zoom call. I'm on this call with this gentleman, and he says to me, "All right, I can tell just by looking at you, you're not a household name." I said, "No, sir." And he said, "What's your social media like?" "I don't have any." He said, "You're in trouble." And he said, "The industry has shrunk so much because of self-publishing. And unless you can prove you have a marketing engine underneath you every time they're not going to touch you right now. You need to self-publish." So this is like an hour conversation, but this is where it ends up. So we hang up. I'm sitting there with my husband, and I said, "Well, I'm all done." I said, "Guess what? We have a fantastic gift to give our kids for Christmas. I need you to put 3-hole punch it, and we're going to give these as presents." And he said, "You're not self-publishing this?" I said, "Not a chance." And I said, "I wouldn't even know where to begin, and I'm not doing that." He said, "Well, again, you haven't prayed." So we're sitting there, and he
I
prays.
love how he calls you out at all the pivotal
Oh,
moments.
I love it too. And it's so funny because I'd be the first to call somebody else on it, but that's how much fear is behind this. And he prays, and as soon as we finish praying, he says, "Ruth, I think my new paddle partner from South Africa just bought a printing company. Let me call him." Calls Michael. Michael, he says, "Do you do books?" Michael's like, "I have no idea. I'll call you right." Yeah, that's real quick. Like he had just bought somebody. He calls Bob back. He goes, "We do." He said, "I'm going to have it done." No, this is November. I mean, this is September. He said, "I will have it done in 6 weeks. I'll do it for cost. If you could track Ruth in my boardroom, on Monday, I will have the heads of every department there to walk her through this process."
My gosh,
When I tell you,
who gets this?
when I tell you there is nothing start to finish, even the shows that I was offered that I said no to, I can't tell you from start to finish. There's nothing I can take credit from. In fact,
I mean, Ruth, this is just like this is
it's
I'm
it's in spite of me.
yeah.
Everything I had prayed for, right? He's like, "I'm not only gonna not let you take credit for most of it, I'm not even gonna let you take credit for any of it
Mm,
because I'm gonna take you someplace that you fought me on."
mm.
And, so it has been, and just what's continued, I can't even tell you the conversations that I've been able to have that I have no business having. the people who have stepped in to stand in the gap and to leverage their own, their own name, to put me in places that I have no business being. I mean, my first thing, I mean, think about it. It came out November 1. I'm sitting, and I think it was even lightly snowing in front of the farmer's market with my stack of books going, anyone want a book? I had no idea what I was doing.
So much. Um, so I just wanna kinda tag back to a few really vulnerable things that you've said. I'm trying to wrap us up just a little bit for today because we're gonna save that you got this ginormous television show for next time. Audience, just stay tuned. Um, how many years has it been since you wrote the book?
I think 4.
4. I hear this theme a little bit in your story of how you felt with your mom,
Mhm.
and how you felt in the beginnings, what Uncle Hubert called you to, you prayed, and these women who began to grow something
Mhm.
inside of you, but it's your concept, it's your belief
Mm.
in home.
Listen, it
It
sparked my DNA.
Yeah, but you didn't even know it. And then you didn't feel like you were good enough to write it. You didn't feel like you were good enough to sit at the table with these women who were encouraging
Or
you.
that I had something to say.
You did and good enough may not be the right words, but you didn't feel like you had this.
Mhm.
Do you now, 4 or 5 years later?
It has been, and this is where I can get teary, it has been 4 years of the imposter syndrome. It is a strange place, I remember asking Bob once, like, "Was all those years of courtroom experience wasted? Was all the things that we put out?" I mean, obviously, we flipped homes, the Lord gave us huge opportunities, but for me, and I just shared this story. I was at a wedding over the weekend, and one of my former law professors was there, and he had seen something of me out there. And I said, "Do you remember?" I was first year law student. I'm in constitutional law. The dean's teaching the constitutional law. And what they do in law school is it's called the Socratic method. You have to stand up for that 2 hours of class, and you are asked questions for 2 straight hours. Nobody else. Like, it is just you. And because the dean knew me, because my dad was a law professor, he called on me very early on in the year. And I remember standing up and I passed out immediately. I woke up in another room, had my feet up, and at graduation, a couple of the professors handed me a helmet and said, "For the people who will never be a trial lawyer." It's fascinating because what did I become? And I would never be able to stand in front of the groups that I stand in front of or even the camera that I do and think as quickly on my feet
Mhm.
than for that training. So it's been so sweet for me. So that has been a sweet thing to see. Nothing was wasted. Not
Mm.
experiences and not things he grew in me that I didn't think I'd ever see again. Um,
I just wanna come through the camera right now and put my arms around you.
well,
No imposter syndrome, baby. You've got this. It is so, like you said, in your DNA, and you are so much enough. You are through and through. You're enough to be a great writer. You're enough to be a great speaker, and it's your purpose.
yeah, it is. Well, I think for me, if I can give tools to women or families or men, I've spoken to men, if I can give them tools to understand um, how to, or the willingness and the courage. So it's a couple of things, right? The willingness and the courage to ask the Lord for more, to be willing to be taken to places you're not enough, and to trust in those spaces, but also to give families tools, um,
Like
create a
let's
culture that's healthy.
Yeah, let's close today with let's give our listeners a little bit of what you would give in a speech about creating a culture of home.
Well, for me, and often it depends on who's in the audience, right?
Yeah.
But if I can encourage families to be intentional about creating a culture that is healthy, um, that blesses people in and through your home, the ability to slow things down and to value, um, that's what I try to give.
Or do I love the slow things down. We live in such a fast culture. We seldom even sit together as a family.
We live in.
Don't take time to talk. We have devices everywhere.
I mean, that's one of the things people say, well, what's an example of what you do? Well, we would read out loud as a family, right?
Ah,
We I grew up doing that, and it didn't matter if there was a 2-year-old playing with Lego. They knew that that was part of our rhythm, and
well, that's beautiful.
so, not you couldn't necessarily I had 5 athletes. You couldn't necessarily have dinner together, but we knew we had those 20 minutes in the evening together, and it quieted things, and then we were able to say, "Okay, what did you go through today? What do you need encouragement on?" And, so it's creating certain rhythms that, again, go to your mission.
I love that, Ruth. I've loved having this afternoon with you.
Me too. Thank you for having me.
One of many more, I hope, because you've got a lot to say.
I love that.